keep on running. I keep on running. I keep on running. Running. Non-stop till they out of breath. Putting in about 1,000 reps. Addicted to the grind like a pound of meth. Tonight I rock my line of how I climb the best.
Welcome to the Football Autobiography Show. It is such a pleasure to be with you all today, wherever in the world you are listening. The Football Autobiography Show is dedicated to taking you on a football journey with football's most interesting players, coaches, trainers, staff, and journalists. Think of these as mini football autobiographies. Each guest will show you how they got where they are now, reveal their techniques for success, and what they've learned along the way. Our guest today is personal trainer Ade Mafe. Mafe was one of the first fitness coaches in the Premier League, where he coached at Chelsea from 1996 until 2005. He then coached at Millwall, MK Dons, West Brom, and Watford. He's worked with world-class players and coaches like Claudio Ranieri, Roberto Di Matteo, Gianfranco Zola, and Jose Mourinho, just to name a few. Before he started his coaching career, he was an accomplished sprinter. He competed in the 200 meters in the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles at the age of 17. In our conversation, we discuss the piece of wisdom Carl Lewis gave him, how Premier League teams trained in 1996, how Rui Faria and Jose Mourinho revolutionized football fitness, and how he missed the first goal of the 1997 FA Cup final. I'm here in the storage room at the gym in Hounslow with Ade Mafe. It's such a pleasure to be with you. How are you doing today?
Nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm well. I'm very, very well indeed.
So to start off the episode, normally I asked about your childhood and things like that, and we'll get to that. But the first thing I'd like to ask you is, what's the most interesting thing about you that a person wouldn't learn from reading your Wikipedia page?
I guess from a very young age, I used to like competition. I like all forms of competition, i.e., all forms of sport, from the winners and the losers side of things, mano kind of team against team. I've always been that way from a very early age, and I found a great interest in doing athletics from a very early age because it was mano. It was like me on my own, and there was no one to judge me or make an opinion about who I was or what I did. It was first past the post, and I got a great buzz off that aspect of sport.
So what were you like as a person when you were starting off, in high school or here, secondary school and in college, like, 15, 16? What type of person were you?
Interesting. I think from a very early age, I had a coach who was very much into preserving the ability that I showed, and thus believed in keeping people away from me and stopping me being influenced by other people. And that, as I found out as I got older, that desire to keep me away from people made people think that I was somewhat arrogant, somewhat aloof, somewhat distant to the normal things that were going on.
Can you explain a little bit what you mean by, like, when you say keep away from what exactly? Like,
I think he was afraid of me being influenced by the wrong people. He would lose control over what I was doing, so I would not listen to what he said because other people will influence me.
Such as like friends or
friends, girlfriends, parties, girls going out, stuff like that. As you get older, things like that start to pop up in your life, and he wanted me to remain focused on what I was doing and preserve what we had, and to the extent that he would, I remember I got my first retainer off Adidas back when I was 17, and I had one little fallout with my parents, and he wanted me to buy a house close to him. And I ended up buying a flat close to him because he wanted that influence and he could control me. And he would pass my flat, and if he saw my girlfriend's car outside, he would then accuse me of staying up with my girlfriend all night instead of sleeping when I should be sleeping and training.
Wow.
That's the type of thing I was talking. That's the type of control he was trying to infect on me, and thus people used to think I was somewhat arrogant and somewhat aloof.
And so looking back on it now, I mean, what feelings do you have towards him or just that way of controlling you?
Now I realize that you don't really need to be that way. I also realize that it's like if you put cream in a cup, it rises to the top. The good stuff rises to the top anyway. My path might have been completely different at that age. My path chose to be the way it chose to be. But the one thing I do know is that you might have a young guy who says, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And in life, you can't take anything for granted. Something will come along, and maybe a girl, maybe you get injured, maybe just life can make a big difference to the maturity of a young, prodigious talent.
Yeah, and so prestigious talent might be an understatement. At 17, you're going to the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. And what was that experience like for you at such a young age?
I mean, I think it was just a big event. I think anybody knowing that they compete in the Olympic Games it's the same. I had already set in my head my objective before the game started, and that was to get to the final. Then you were just enjoying the whole experience, really. The whole experience of going to LA for the first time, running the Coliseum, and everything that Olympic Games brings with it. You know, competing in front of 102,000 people, UCLA, all those names that you'd heard. It was just an amazing experience from start to finish.
Did you get to meet any of the famous athletes of the time, like Carl Lewis, Daley Thompson, or is there anyone that you got to meet that you were just awestruck by?
Yeah, my big hero when I was young was Alberto Wantarina from Cuba, who ran in the 76 and 76 Olympics. But I knew who the big stars were. I knew Coe, I knew Sebastian Coe, I knew Steve Ovett, I knew Daley Thompson. I fortunately had the experience of meeting them pre-Olympic Games. Carl Lewis at the Olympic Games, ran against him, met him as well. But I can imagine the pressure he was under. But I did get the chance to meet him 4 years later, doing an advert. And one of the most important things he said to me was, he said to me, "You're the guy who ran in the Olympics," and I went, "Yes." And he says, "I finished last," and he said, "No, you didn't. You finished 8th."
Very true.
I just thought that was the first time anybody had mentioned that to me. As far as I was concerned, I finished last in the final, but he said I finished 8th in the final because all the people who tried to get to the final didn't get there, and that was quite a refreshing view on the whole experience, which I hadn't considered before. And
so after you get to the Olympics, and as you said, you got 8th place, and then you had a pretty successful career at getting bronze at the Commonwealth Games. What those 5 years after you had been to the Olympics and kind of got a taste of the big time, what was that next chapter like?
Well, you know, again, I think for me, Los Angeles and years immediately afterwards, it was just purely track sessions, just running sessions. It wasn't a factor of body conditioning at all. I think in today's world, everybody knows that it's about body conditioning. I just used to train 3 times a week, and that was all I ever did. And I got introduced to body conditioning in 1988. I actually went to Los Angeles, lived in Los Angeles for 6 months, in Irvine, and there I was introduced. I basically started training with the track coach at the local university, and he introduced me to gym sessions and weight training and stuff like that. And I was always playing catch-up. Those 5 years in between, I spent, 2-3 years declining. I spent a year trying to sort myself out. I ended up splitting with my coach, going to another coach. I went to coach Williamford Christie's coach. I started training with him, and I had a little bit of success. My highlight of the success was the bronze medal in the Commonwealth Games. But then looking back again in hindsight, we were training for him. We would do what he did, and I found that I couldn't physically handle the stuff that he did because he was just bigger and stronger than me, and I ended up with tendonitis of my Achilles, and and I broke my bone in my foot, and I sort of called it a day from there on. But in hindsight, yes, you would do it differently, but at that present time, at that moment in time, that's what you chose.
But so eventually you said your career was kind of derailed by a foot injury, and you get into personal training. And so how did you end up at Chelsea in 1996?
Well, I think I retired from athletics at 26. I broke a bone in my toe. And then I thought, well, okay, now that's stopped. Now that episode of my life has stopped, I need to start a new chapter. I wanted to go into fitness. Was living in Bayswater, working in Kensington, fitness coach for 3-4 years. And then just out of the blue, I got a phone call saying to me, your boss says you're the best. Do you want to come and work for Chelsea Football Club? They told me what they wanted me to do. I said, yes, I can do that. And thus the next chapter was started. And for 10 years, I was at Chelsea Football Club. And for 17 years, I was in football.
So what they said, they had you with a plan in mind. What did they want you to do? My job brief was to warm the players up for training, to warm the players up for games, to cool them down if they needed to cool down, take care of all the physical abilities, and if they went in the gym wanting to do anything, help them out. At that time, I think there was only one fitness coach in the Premiership. A lot of players garnered their fitness from other forms of exercise. So a good runner would be a good midfielder. A good sprinter would be a striker. Nowadays, you can garner your fitness from football with the advent of GPS and so on and so forth. So the whole emphasis has changed. The rehab is more important. They analyse a lot more, analyse players a lot more. They find that players don't use their glutes as much when they run. Science has got into it and broken it down, and it's a completely different game from what it was back in the day. You basically, if you had the ability to play football, that was the most important thing. The fitness, you can work on it, but you had to have the ability to play football in the first place. And so at the time when they give you this job description, who is making the fitness plans at these clubs, previously? And when you saw their plans or their fitness at the time in 1996, what did you think of it?
There wasn't one really, to be fair. I mean, I think the manager had a fitness coach in Italy because he was an Italian player.
This is Rui Faria. Yeah.
He had a fitness coach in Italy and followed the model. When he was appointed manager of Chelsea, he wanted to follow the model. I don't think there was a fitness plan. In those days, most fitness plans came from the manager. If the manager wanted you to do it, if he wanted to get his team fit, he would just run them. And they used to do things like suicide runs,
that's how I grew up playing.
It's exactly the same. Whereas now, I think 1998, I was like, suicides? Okay, but mentally, if you're strong, suicides will work for you. Because when you're struggling mentally, if you've got that toughness, you will keep going and you will fight. You will keep going. So physically, from a physical point of view, suicides just show you the mental strength of your players, not the physical capabilities of your players, the mental strength. It's like doing a bleep test. Bleep test is more mental strength. Yeah, you can run, but if you want to keep going and keep going and keep going, you will keep going. But if you no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put my body there through all that. I'm going to just stop. You just stop. And there's a psychological side to it, and then there's a physiological side to it. And you have to be careful. You have to think about what your objectives are before you go into it. And if your objectives are you want to find who's strong and who's not, then fine.
Were there any other things you noticed about the current fitness plans or the way they went about fitness that you thought were a little either outdated or just could be improved when you first came in?
Oh, when I first came in, yeah, you could see there was a big scope for improvement, definitely.
In what ways?
Just the player attitude. I remember once I was rounded off and said, "This is not a Chelsea Athletic Club. This is Chelsea Football Club." And so you knew that the attitude of the players wasn't as much into physical fitness as it is now. For instance, you're getting people who are faster, stronger, people who are fitter, stronger, and they're going to get injured just as much because they're being asked to train a lot harder and the physical demands are a lot more. And we know in football, it does age you. Doing it every day, training every day, although it's fun at the time, but you'll find that it will take any life force out of you.
And so when did you notice that teams were kind of catching on into the importance of having a fitness coach? Obviously in Italy, you said that it was more common at the time, but there was only one in the Premier League around the time you came. When did other teams start to catch on?
I think, for instance, I can obviously talk about Chelsea, but the advent of foreign players and the success of those type of teams, and another team started looking at what these guys are doing different that they don't do, and so they started thinking, right, we better employ, and before you know it, now every team in the Premiership has a fitness coach or someone who's on the fitness sports science department, getting players back from injury as quickly as possible, increasing the performance of your team. Even for we talk about England players, the holes in the net have got a lot smaller, and so because they've got a lot smaller now, you're getting a lot of guys who are being stuck outside and they can't get in because the nets, the qualifications that you need, i.e. goal scoring ability, speed, quickness, all those categories are that much higher that you have to be performing at such a high level to break into these teams, and because the competition is so much more, is wider. That's just an advent of opening up your game.
So while you were at Chelsea, who was the person that you almost didn't need to get fitter, that they were just so naturally fit?
Gianfranco, Zola. I don't even have to think about the answer to that one.
So in what ways was he just so fit?
He was just genetically, it's a bit like Ryan Giggs. He was just like, he knew what he needed to do. He would do yoga, which was really important. He would go out and train. He would go out and practice. He knew that what he would do. I think the biggest thing for me was that he, at the end of one season, he wasn't playing, and I don't know what he was doing in the off season, but he came back the following year and he was just yards ahead in every aspect, and the manager could not ignore him because he was that much better than everybody else who was there.
Well, he had a couple just great years at the end of the 90s, just where he was incredible. And who improved the most that you were really proud of, that when you were with them at first maybe weren't so fit, and then when you started to work with them they got just incredibly fit?
I think everybody improved. I think they had to improve. I think that there was an evolution of football players in not just on the pitch but off the pitch as well. an evolution in the wages, evolution in the lifestyles, evolution in the competition, the advent of the foreigner, the whole shebang was completely changed. And for instance, you know, if you were an alcoholic, you wouldn't be able to get away with it now. I know, and still players would come in. Players would come in on a Sunday to train, and the whole place would be just stinking of drunk wine, you know. And eventually, those players would just say, you know, they wouldn't play because they could bring in players that could do it, and those players would be not teetotalers, but they would drink in moderation and they would do things in moderation, and some would be teetotalers and some would be looking after themselves, and slowly it started filtering out all the and this is why you're finding a lot of the British players started to fall back, because people were starting bringing a more economical athletes for the money that they were getting paid.
And so when you were with these players, you know, these are guys at the top of their game at, you know, in 90, you know, in the late 90s, Chelsea was doing fantastic. And how did you try to motivate them, or did they need motivation? Was there any player that needed a little extra kick?
Because I came from athletics, they didn't need a kick because they were playing football. And so a lot of the problem was, you're not a footballer, you don't understand what's going on. I think, although they were quite happy for me to deal with the physical side of it, if I, for a minute, decided to comment on the football side of it, I was instantly like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't have any, you haven't got any history in athletics, you don't know it. No history in football, you don't know about football, so you don't know what you're talking about. And so, I didn't really think I should be there motivating them, because...
No, but motivating them to, like, you know, kill it on that suicide, or kill it on their running, like on their workout, is what I mean. Like,
I mean,
because some people,
you can... I think initially you have but then I think people that they quickly realise why you were brought in, and so they did apply themselves begrudgingly to that side of the game. But at the end of the day, as I say, for them it was all about playing football. It was all about hitting that ball the right way, and they never really thought about how much running they were doing in the game and how they were sprinting and what they were doing. Although you were brought in to help that side of it, it wasn't really a highlight for them. If you said to them, right, I want you to get 10 balls and shoot at the goal and practice your technique about kicking the ball, they would do that. But if I said to them, right, practice your technique of kicking the ball, but then run back over there and then run back over here and then kick it again, they wouldn't think about running back and running here. They would just think about kicking. Because they never really applied themselves to, they never really thought about what they would do after it. They would just apply themselves to the technique of kicking the ball in the first place.
So you were creative in kind of making some of your workouts it like intertwined with the football, so they didn't have to think about.
It was initially about making your workouts to intertwine with football. You had to make it specific for football, obviously, but then it very quickly became, well, I don't need to do that. I'm a footballer, so I don't need to do this. What am I running backwards and forwards? If it wasn't specific for football, it was like, what am I doing at this for? Because it doesn't help me in my game. And you had to convince them that this did help you.
How did you try to convince?
You just have to explain to them when they haven't got the ball, this is what they're doing.
Is there a specific incident that kind of comes to mind that would illustrate what you're talking about?
I once had a player that was complaining about doing box-to-box runs, box-to-box on the football pitch. And he said it wasn't specific to what he was doing. And I said to him, yes, it wasn't really specific, but it's about keeping your levels up, keeping your fitness levels up. So if you do get picked, you have a level of fitness to come in and play. But he insisted that, no, it wasn't specific. It wasn't what he needed, and he wasn't going to do it. And so we had a bigger discussion about why I'm there, what I'm there to do, why I'm trying to help you. And at the end of the day, I'm not trying to punish you. I'm there to try and help you. And you're making them understand that I'm just there to help them. I'm not there to just make them run up and down like crazy.
Yeah. And as a sprinter, I'm curious, who is the fastest player you ever worked with?
They're all different depending on what distance.
Okay, so let's just call 40 meters and then maybe like box to box.
The problem with that is it's speed maintenance. A lot of these guys, they're very quick accelerating, but they can't maintain that speed. And you see stories about, and there's a guy at Arsenal who's run 40 meters faster than Usain Bolt, which is all well and good, but can he keep that speed up? That's the problem. He won't be able to keep that speed up. He's running at maximum velocity at 40 meters, and then after that, he's just going to decelerate. Whereas Usain will just keep going, and that's what makes him who he is, and that's what makes that's what happens. And if you know what's happening, you'll hear it, but you'll think, no. Yeah, he might have a faster time, but he won't be able to maintain that. And you see most of them, they can't maintain that speed.
So who's like the one or two guys that immediately kind of popped into your head?
Pop into my head. What, today or then?
Then at Chelsea, 20 years ago, in the late 90s, early 2000s.
There was about speed maintenance. There was a player, Michael Dewberry, who was a big centre half, and he was one of these players that could maintain. But even when he did complain, we did have a competition and he did run. He just about, and I hadn't trained for quite a few years in that time. 10 meters acceleration, maybe Gianfranco Zola. He used to regularly compete against me, just acceleration from standing start. I think he was more likely the quickest because he was a low centre of gravity, so he knew it was important to him, his reaction speed and how he accelerated. And as I said, he was one of the few players at that time that actually realised that physically it was more than just playing football. It was your physical attributes did have a big influence on what you did as well.
And so you mentioned, like, you were obviously, it was more than a couple of years removed from your career, but how many, when you first got there in 1996, how many were you faster than at that time?
Oh, most.
Yeah, so they were they were a bit impressed then.
I couldn't play football.
Yeah, but
I couldn't play football, but I was faster than them. And that was the difference. And I think even if you go into a club nowadays, if you took an athlete into a club, he'd be run faster than them, and they'd be quite a long way behind. But that athlete couldn't play football. To be able to start for 90 minutes, no chance. I was only used to starting and then stopping, and then I was finished for 20 seconds, a minute at the max. But these guys keep going for 90 seconds. And they used to say to me, come and play. Just in training. Yeah, you come over and play. And within 10 minutes, then you realise that it's hard. And the thing is about it, you hear people say, oh, well, I can do that. No. Yes, you could do it, but not to the level that these guys are doing it. The time when your legs are full of lactic and you want to have to sprint again, nah, you won't want to do it. If that ball bounces and you're not going. You got to run down and chase that ball. No, you're not going down there because your legs won't carry you down there. And that's what they're playing for. And you realise when you see them after 90 minutes, they're all exhausted, and you realise that no, this is not just a physical thing. This is an endurance event, and it is an endurance event.
And I want to read a quote you gave in a newspaper. There will be 3 weeks of, in regards to like a preseason plan. You said there will be 3 weeks of base work, which is kilometer runs, the same as we did last year. And last year we managed to do about 35 kilometers, and this year we are going to get up to just under 50 kilometers. So what is a normal preseason plan that you used to do?
Well,
and how did that evolve over the years, from 1996 to 2012 when you were with Watford?
It evolved. What we used to do for pre-season, they used to do kilometre runs, just running for a kilometre.
Just one?
Just 1 kilometre. And you do maybe 5, you start at 3 and you maybe go up to 6. Okay. And that 50 kilometre total is the total amount that you would do over a pre-season. So you would do that in the morning session. So in the morning session, you would come down, you would put your trainers on, and you maybe do 6,000 metre runs. And in the afternoon, then you would play football. You have some lunch, and in the afternoon, you would play football. Now, you're playing football in the morning with the aid of GPS, so they know how far you've travelled. And then you would play football in the afternoon, and then they would say, right, they would say to you, the people who are monitoring would say, right, that's enough. That's enough training for today. You've done the required distance in your training session.
6 kilometers,
6 kilometers
running
in a game of football.
Okay.
So you don't need to do any more.
Yeah. So the conditioning has been combined with the football,
Yes.
whereas before it used to be just conditioning.
Just conditioning.
And then...
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's happened. With the advent of technology now, it's completely changed.
And then you have separate weight sessions.
Yes,
as
separate
well.
weight sessions. Also what happened was that you got fitness coaches that were associated with certain managers, and they worked as a team. An example would be Claudio Ranieri and Roberto Sassi. When Claudio Ranieri got the Chelsea job, Roberto Sassi came from Italy to work with Claudio, and Antonio Pintus was Luca Vialli's manager, fitness coach. And although Claudio said to Antonio, you can stay, you can work with me, no problem, Antonio said, no, your fitness coach is Roberto Sassi, I can't work with you, I've got to be loyal, I can't be changed like that, you have to bring Roberto Sassi. And so he left, and Roberto Sassi came in. And then Antonio Pintus is now working. He worked for the French national team with Deschamps. They're working in Italy, and now he's just gone with Zidane to Madrid. He's working with Zidane in Madrid. So again, it also depends on your luck, on where you are in the right place and the right time, and he might, I don't know how he got recommended to Zidane as a fitness coach. He might have got recommended by someone, a player in Real Madrid, and said, I like working with this guy. And then Zidane's like, right, okay, where do I find him? What's he doing? I want him here.
And so you were with a number of different managers. As you mentioned, Ranieri, you were with Mourinho, Gullit, a lot of managers. I think 5 while you were at Chelsea. How did you have to alter your approach with each one, and how much did they want to change the program each time?
Well, to tell you the whole story, I think I did the first manager on my own. Gullit left and Vialli was appointed manager, and I was concerned because he'd left lots of trailers about he was going to bring his own fitness coach in, and he was the guy who brought in initially Antonio Pintus. Now Antonio Pintus came in from Italy and his English wasn't so brilliant, so what he did was he said, I want you to help this guy. And I was assistant fitness coach. So the fitness coach set the policy of what they were going to do, and the Italian methodology was brought in, and I just assisted and looked at from the side. I didn't really make any decisions about what was going on with the club or what was going on with the team. The fitness coach did that. I just helped him to implement it to the players. Then Claudio Ranieri was appointed manager, and he brought in Roberto Sassi. And again, I was assistant, and I just helped him implement what he thought the players should do. When Mourinho came in, he brought in his fitness coach, Rui Faria, who they go everywhere together. Chelsea was with me, he's now with the Manchester United. And again, assistant, but it changed. He was one of the first managers to bring in the football side of conditioning. A lot of his conditioning was a football exercise. And then I left Chelsea, went to Millwall Football Club. At Millwall Football Club, I found that the levels of football, you couldn't do a football session. I mean, I'll give you an example. You would have a fitness session, which would be a player with the ball. He would ping that ball 40 yards. The player would trap the ball. The ball would go to the player would trap the ball, then pass it to another player and run. And that was the first time you had any exercises like that. So you had the ability of the player that would help the fitness. But I found at Millwall, if you had players they couldn't ping 40-yard balls. Or they ping 40-yard balls, they go over there. And so straight away they were having to run double the distance. And so you knew straight away this isn't going to work. And they spent more time running after the balls than actually running in this exercise. So you had to go back to the running side of it because that wouldn't work with those players. Whereas if you're in Real Madrid, you get a player to put a ball on a spot over there. You had a player who had the ability to do that. He could judge how far it was and he'd kick it and it would land in that area. And so your training is completely different.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned your time with Millwall, and then you were at MK Dons with and Watford and West Brom. With the different levels between Chelsea players and those a level below, were their motivations different? Levels different? Were they lower or the same? Or?
I wouldn't say the levels, the motivational levels were the same. I just think the technical ability was different. And then this is why they played at lower levels, because they didn't have the technical ability to play with the elite.
But in terms of fitness, it was more or less. They were. I think
you'll find that their levels of fitness maybe as we're going back, maybe were slightly down. They could operate at their simple level, but their fatigue levels would go a lot quicker. So they could maybe do a half playing at a level playing field, but then as the second half grew on, their levels would drop. Their people wouldn't run so far. Their minds, your mentally wouldn't be as strong because you'd be tired. And the top guys, they would keep going. They'd just be consistent, keep going. And so you have that little difference. Technical ability, yes. I mean, cool, blimey.
But so when you got in at 1996, players were getting, it was, it's still somewhat, the Premier League was still kind of new with money, but, once your career kind of got longer, there was a lot more money. I mean, obviously the 2004-2005 Chelsea team was completely different money-wise than the 96.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did that affect preparations and just fitness levels in general?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, when you got more money, your away game at Newcastle, you were flying, whereas previously you might have gone by bus.
Even at the different levels of football that you were at, did you see money as a major motivator, or because they had so much that they didn't have to do as much fitness?
It's funny. I think if you had 100,000 on one hand and a Premiership winners medal on the other hand, they'd all bite their hand off with the Premiership winners medal. Yeah. I think the money side of it is just it's there, but it's not a focus. To 98%, you do get a 2% that I think, I'm here because I know I'm going to get paid. The majority will think trophy, medal, we want to be winners, and that's what drives them. You do get a few that I think, oh no, I want to get paid. I think that's what's more important to me.
Did you find that young players now are as driven as they used to be?
I just think there's a larger percentage that is not as driven. There are people who are driven, but just that they're, if you I think I remember a documentary on footballers ages ago, and a player turned up at a ground in a big car, and the young boy went, "That's what I want. That's what I want." And they went, "What?" He goes, "I just want a big car like that." And so that's what drives you, getting a big car like that. And he was one of maybe 10.
Yeah.
But you can see his motivation is the lifestyle. The other 10, that just comes with winning and playing for Chelsea Football Club. And then you get players like that, 9 times out of 10 people, you see straight through it. You'll see straight through it, because there'll time will come when, he won't put himself out because he's not getting paid.
I want to transition a little bit back to 1997, the FA Cup final, which is a special day for you for many reasons.
You've done a lot of research here.
Yeah, take me through that day.
Oh my God. Last FA Cup final at the old Wembley. My first year in football. We beat Wimbledon in the semi-final at Highbury. Great day. I remember getting to Wembley Stadium, and I used to have a long walkway up to the pitch. I just couldn't believe it. You're still like, is this really happening to me? Am I really in Wembley Stadium? Am I running on the pitch at Wembley Stadium? Wow. Took them out for warmed up for the game. Played against Middlesbrough. Went back to the bench. I was sitting behind the bench. I remember going behind the bench and Mark Hughes saying to me, "I forgot my socks. Can you go back and get my socks, please?" So I said, I'll go and get them. And I remember having so much adrenaline in my system, I was actually happy to just go and run. So I literally belted back down to the dressing room, got his socks, belted all the way back up. And as I was butting towards the goal, it was, "Ray!" And I thought, oh no, we've scored. And all the Chelsea fans were going mad. And it was when Roberto Di Matteo scored in 43 seconds. And I was still running back to the dugout with Mark Hughes' socks in my hand. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, now we've got another 98 minutes to go, And then Eddie Newton scored in the last minute, made it 2-0. And, wow, just a completely surreal day. It was one of the days I had no idea it would, after the career in athletics and the personal training, it was no idea that I would go straight so quickly to such a height in another sport. I mean, maybe the Champions League final is maybe the only thing that's above that, really, to be fair, if you're an English player. So to go to the FA Cup final, just like in my first year, it was like, wow.
And I want to get to the celebrations. So a lot of people, when obviously a team wins a cup, it's all about the players on the field. But what's the emotions that the staff are going? Is it like a brotherhood amongst the staff?
Yes, it's like a brotherhood amongst the staff. You feel justified that all the hard work you put in is now come to fruition. But it's not really, I think it's a bit of pride, a bit of, I think once you get that trophy, they've got pictures of me with the trophy and guys with the team with the trophy, the staff with the trophy. And it's a bit downplayed, where the players will be all up and celebrate. It's happy, it's good, but it's not as hyped as the players are when you're a member of staff. You just feel a big sense of pride and a big sense of, that's my team. I've done my bit for that team to win, and so on and so forth.
And so, how did you meet your wife that day?
I met my wife about the end of that season, and that was our first date. I said, do you want to go to the FA Cup? And she came with the wives. And that was our first date. And they celebrated afterwards at the Waldorf Hotel in London. And the rest is history, as they say. But that was a first date. It was pretty impressive for the first one. But
yeah, not too bad at all.
Not too bad at all.
How did that FA Cup final compare to some of the other later FA Cup finals in the future, and some of the other successes that you had with Chelsea, or even at Watford you had a playoff?
At Watford, the playoff, their goal in the last minute, I think, as I said, I think that's the best ever moment in football. I've never seen a place go absolutely off the charts that day. I was absolutely astounded, and unfortunately for me, I contracted a viral complaint after West Brom that I was recovering from at the time, but I had to rein in a lot of my impulses. So when everybody was jumping up and going crazy, then I sat down, and I knew if I jumped up I wouldn't have any control, and so I had to sit down because I knew if I got up I would be all over the place. So I sat down, but I'd never seen the whole place go as mad as that. Yes, there were loads of successes, loads of FA Cups afterwards, loads of Champions Cup Winners' Cup afterwards, all good. But I think for me that first FA Cup was something special. The experience of what it is like to be at the top of the game in another sport. It was different, and also different in the respect that you weren't a competing athlete at the time. You were on the other side, standing back.
So I want to talk about, after Chelsea, you went to Millwall, but then you worked with Roberto Di Matteo for a couple at a couple different clubs at MK Dons and West Brom. What type of relationship did you build with him, and what was it like working with him?
When he played, he always said to me, I remember we were sitting at Stamford Bridge celebrating the FA Cup, and he had a gold bracelet, and I went, oh, well, that's a nice bracelet. And he took it off and said, you have it. I was like, really? And he said to me, if I'm ever a manager in football, I want you to be my fitness coach. And I was like, no. And then I think I left Millwall in the summer. I was working for Sheikh Mohammed, and in the papers there's a little bit of footage saying Roberto Di Matteo has accepted the MK Dons job, and I still had his number on my phone. So I gave him a text, working at MK Dons now. And he rang me back. And he said to me, how do you know? I said, it's all over the papers here. And then he said, well, would you like to come and work for me? I went, well, yeah. So I ended up going to MK Dons. We were working at MK Dons. And then we did a season there. We got to the playoff rounds. And then West Brom came in and they headhunted him. And we went as a team. Me, Eddie Newton and Roberto. Went to West Bromwich Albion. They just went down into the Division 1. We got them straight back out behind Newcastle. And he worked from beginning of the season to February before they sacked him. And then I fell ill. I left there in February, and in March, end of March, I fell ill. And then he decided to become assistant manager at Chelsea when Mourinho went back. No. It was Avram. It was Villas-Boas. He was assistant manager for Andre Villas-Boas. And then Andre Villas-Boas got sacked, and then he got the job, and he took them to the He
won the Champions League.
He went to the Champions League final, and they won it. Yeah. And then he lasted till January, February of the following year. Then he got sacked, and then they brought in Mourinho after that. I did ask him, can I come to Chelsea with you? Is there a place I can work with you at Chelsea? And he said, well, no, the club sort of said, I can bring in one person. And that was obviously Eddie Newton. So Eddie Newton went back to Chelsea. And I was living up in Warwickshire at the time, because what I was doing at a house here in Twickenham, and I was commuting to West Brom. We had a house up there, and I was commuting twice a week. And after a season in the Championship, I decided can't do this anymore. Moved everybody up to a rented house, and they're all still up there.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And just separated from my wife, and I've come back to my mum and dad, and they're still up there. I've got 2 girls, they're still up there. And but even then, when I was up there, I had the opportunity to work at Watford, because the fitness coach at Watford left, and Gianfranco Zola was a manager. Spoke to Roberto Di Matteo, and Roberto Di Matteo said I was still available, and so I ended up going and working at Watford.
Oh, that's incredible. So you got it through kind of knowing Matteo.
Yeah.
And what, just to use those two, since you've worked with a number of managers, but those two, like, really, it seems a little bit more closely. What makes those Matteo such a good manager, or Zola for that matter? I mean, we're talking about a Champions League winner.
I think
Matteo.
They're good people. They're good personal skills. I can say that because I instantly got on with them. When you have a good relationship with someone, it's always easier. A lot of it is trust. A lot of it is knowing you can trust someone to do the job properly. And also, if it's your friend, you're going to say, well, if you've got those skills, come and work with me. And that's how it's always been. That's how it's always been. I could give you several examples. Ade Mafe and Mark Hughes. They were players at Chelsea. And then Mark Hughes goes into management. He's managed Man United, Stoke, he's several different clubs, and Eddie's just followed them everywhere. Brendan Rodgers and Glenn Driscoll. Brendan Rodgers, Chelsea, Glenn Driscoll, physio. Brendan Rodgers gets the Reading job. Glenn Driscoll goes to Reading. Glenn he gets the Liverpool job. Glenn Driscoll goes to Liverpool. Gets the Celtic job. Glenn Driscoll goes to Celtic. That's how it works. I mean, I can say to you, like, if you're thinking about Chelsea players, Gus Poyet, manager. Mark Hughes, manager. And I work with both those players, but I didn't have that type of relationship with those players. And so they've just gone on and doing what they're doing, and I'm here, and that's that. And then Di Matteo gets the Aston Villa job. That lasts so long. Now he's out of work. Yeah. So I don't know where he's going to be appointed again, if he's going to be appointed again. You could see him in China,
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows? I mean, the managerial world is a very
it's a very fickle industry.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a fickle industry, and there's no security. And so, although it gets paid very well, you might be in a job 1 year, and the next year you're not in a job at all. And then if you don't have a backup plan, if you don't have something else running alongside it, you can be stranded. I mean, I found that out, that, I was just football, and then as soon as I got out of West Brom, I got ill, and then what do? And then from that illness, I'm sort of struggling, and then my wife says to me, can't do this anymore. And so I'm down here. Now, what have I got left to fall back on? I'm back in doing personal training, because that's what I was doing before. And then when I was doing it before, I was like 30, thinking, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 40. I'm nearly 50 now. I'm just over 50 now, and I'm still doing it. So,
Yeah, it's a difficult world. I mean, it's all about trust and knowing the right people.
And also what's happened is, I think Rafa Benitez worked at Liverpool. And what he did was, when he got the Liverpool job, he just changed all the staff. Changed the whole staffing, all of it, to his liking. And I think clubs now, they're not too keen on that. So if they appoint a manager, the manager can maybe bring in 1 or 2 people, and that's it. And so if you're associated with a manager, you have to go through the club to get a job. So, for instance, I know at West Brom, there's a fitness coach at West Brom who, when I was there, was the academy fitness coach. As soon as I left, he got appointed first team fitness coach. And the managers kept changing. and he was still first. And I think if you go back there now, he's still first team fitness coach. Same thing at Chelsea. There's a guy at Chelsea who's been there God knows how many years. I think he's been there for maybe the last 4 managers, even Scolari. Before Scolari, he was there.
Okay, so we're talking like 6-7 years.
Yeah, and he sort of floated between reserve team, first team, reserve team, first team. And even when Mourinho went back the second time, Rui was doing certain things of importance, Rui would do. But if he didn't think it was important, they would get the other guy to come and do it. And Rui would just not do it. And they would like job share. And even though Rui's title was assistant manager, this guy was a fitness coach, but Rui would do the fitness coach side of it. And it would be what the manager wanted. Right, so if the manager wanted, right, okay, I want you to look after this player, Rui would look after that player and do the rehab for that player. And the second guy wouldn't. But then, if the second guy, there was something less, they would share the job. So Rui would go, okay, you go and do that. And he would do it. And that's how it works. You know, and even now Mourinho's gone to Manchester United. Rui's there, but Rui's assistant manager. Or he's assistant manager. Or assistant coach. And all he's doing is he does a bit about the football, but the main thing that Rui does is from the conditioning side, from the exercises side that they do in training, Rui's in command of that.
That's very interesting. I mean, I didn't know that at all. Something that's really a hot button issue is a lot of people talk about fatigue and players. I mean, they have such a long season. I mean, right now they're still doing internationals. A lot of guys are in the Confed Cup, and so during the season you have, for a lot of these teams, playing European games like the Europa League or the Champions League, and then they play their weekend game. And back when you were doing fitness, with Chelsea when they were in the Champions League or in the Europa Cup, how did you manage players so that they didn't get overtrained or fatigued when they're playing 2-3 times a week?
How do I put this? I think the brain's like a battery, and the battery uses up energy, and the energy gets used up, and you're asking a player who's been using that battery from pre-season last year till now. And it's going to take sometimes more than a month to get that brain energy back. It's a real problem, and the real problem, the problem I think you'll find with a lot of some players now is burnout. That's the big thing, and then
you're talking mental burnout.
Mental burnout, not physical. Physical, they can handle it. Physical he can handle the rigors of a game. Mentally, though, it's another thing. Just having to. It's funny, as an athlete or a footballer, you don't think you're not aware that you're using so much mental energy, but you are. Every game, you're using mental energy. Every time you have nerves, if you're not nervous, you're not in the right frame of mind. So if you have to be nervous, if you're nervous, then you're using mental energy, and after a while, it gets depleted, and you need a good break. And whether a month is enough, and then you're just playing catch up, because you'll be way behind everybody else. You maybe missed out a pre-season because you haven't done a pre-season with everybody else. So even pre-season, that's still mental recharge before you compete. And if you don't get that, you have to compete. You've missed it. You're going back in again, and mentally it's hard to adjust. And
so, to transition, I want to ask you some personal questions, Ade, before we finish. What was your favorite exercise to do, or drill or activity to do with all your teams that you maybe did when you were at Chelsea, that you did at Watford, that you did that?
Doggies.
What? Can you explain what that is?
It's very similar to a suicide, but a bit shorter.
So, it's just a length?
It's just a length rug back, short jog back, length jog back, length jog back. It's like doggies are just going backwards and forwards. And the way that Rui Faria would use a football in it and incorporate a football exercise and football demands in a fitness drill was revolutionary at that time.
Can you just go into a little bit more detail? What was so revolutionary about?
So you would have two groups of players. One group of player 40 yards away. One player this side would have a ball. He'd pass the ball up, and when he passed the ball up, he would go running towards that ball. He'd follow the ball that way. So he was getting a 40-yard run that way. The player at that end would trap the ball, control the ball, pass it to the coach, go for some ladders, get the ball back from the coach, run in, and pass the ball to the next person in the line. And that person would pass the ball, get the ball, ping it 40 yards. And so they would just be constantly rotating round. But there were football demands at each end. Obviously, you had to have players that could put that ball 40 yards.
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, like Millwall.
If you've got a player that can't do that, the whole drill gets spoiled. So you need players that can do that. If you have players that can do that, it becomes a football exercise, but it becomes a conditioning exercise as well at the same time. Because you're getting a 40-yard run and you're getting a sprint with the ball. And so at that time, I think it was pretty revolutionary. I don't think anybody had seen a drill like that, would even consider. I mean, we saw it and we were straight away thinking, that's not enough. But it was. And so, his team was performing better in the last 20 minutes of games than any other team in the Premiership. So you knew it was enough. So you think, well, maybe then we are overtraining. Maybe we need to look at what we're doing, and maybe what we're doing is a bit too much.
So what is something about football fitness or football training that 95% of fans wouldn't know or would surprise most people?
For me, I think it's the levels that these guys will go to. I think when you're on the stand and you watch it on TV, you think, yeah, I can do that. I don't think you can do that. And I don't think you realise what levels they are operating at. I think only if you go into a dressing room after a game and you see them all red-faced and exhausted, then you realise, these guys have worked pretty hard. And I think as a fan, you hear fans, oh, he shouldn't be paid so much money, and I could do that. And what's he doing, kicking the ball around a field? That's nothing. I can do that. No. No. I mean, I think another one that gives me an example is like you watch a marathon. You watch a guy running in a marathon, and you see the leaders running in the leading bunch, and they look like they're jogging. And you see someone from the side, when someone decides to run along with them. And these guys are running 26 miles at that speed. And the guys who are running on side, they can't keep up.
So what is the funniest story or the funniest happening of your 10 years at Chelsea?
We signed a legendary player, George Weah, from Liberia. And from a distance, I could be easily mistaken for him. And I think we'd played Newcastle, and all the players had got on the coach, and the staff were helping put in the skips with all the equipment back into the coach. And so I was there pushing a skip, helping push a skip. And I came out, and all the players on the coach eating lunch, eating their dinner, waiting for us to come out. This is like 11 o'clock at night after the evening game. And as I've come out, there were some obviously Geordies or Chelsea fans, George! Because they see me come pushing out a skip. And I've flipped in my head, and I'm like, I'm not George Weah! And they all went, oops, sorry. And all the staff were laughing because I wasn't, obviously they knew I wasn't. But the fact that you get people, some fans you sort of think. And I remember I was at Stamford Bridge and I was going in, and this guy said to me, he went for every black player in the team, sign this, and I said, I'm not him. And he could see him thinking, Black. Who else? Black. Andy Myers? Andy Myers looked nothing like me. Can you sign this, Andy? I'm not Andy Myers. Yeah. And then you could see him thinking, black player. Michael Dubry. No, I'm not Michael Dubry. And he just couldn't think of. He didn't know his players well enough to know that I wasn't a player. I remember playing.
What would your football legacy like to be if you could? What do you think your football legacy is? Or as a fitness trainer, and
I like to be part of the revolution. I think that's the best way to put it. You know, I feel like I was part of the revolution. I was there and brought on change, and maybe a bit too early, but I was there, brought on change. Initiator, instigator. I think just initially just starting that change in football that is prevalent now. And that's how I view myself. I think you can. The Italians have been doing it for years. I had the chance when I was working with Roberto Sassi to go to Florence, although I didn't speak any Italian, but they took me to Florence they call it the Coverciano, which is like the conference for all the fitness coaches in Italy. And I remember there was 300 jobs for all the football clubs, and there were like 3,000, 4,000 applicants. You have to study 3 years. You have to have a sports science degree, study for 3 years in university to be even considered. And so there was obviously a lot more people qualified to do the job than there were actually people working. But that mentality, they went. It's like they looked at football and the success of the Nottingham Forests and the Liverpools of the 70s, and they thought, well, how can we change our football? And they went, right, okay. They started bringing in all sorts of athletic stuff to make their players faster and make their players better. And I don't think you can. They married very well. I don't think you can marry athletics with football. I think football is very unique. You have to work within football to make football better. You can't bring in something from outside football and run it alongside football to make football better. That I know now. But at the time, they were just bringing pure athletic training, bounding, skipping, running, squats, in a organised manner for footballers. It completely took them out of their box. Some of them didn't like doing it because it completely took them out of their box. And they need to be in their box as much as possible. The one thing they love doing, playing football. I remember the first morning, I ran them. They finished the running, they're out on their feet, they're looking absolutely knackered. And I'm thinking, I've done a good job. Got in the afternoon, they got the ball out. And I remember looking at them thinking, maybe I didn't give them enough work in the morning. But then you realise that these guys, they just want to kick the ball. I want the ball. I want to kick the ball. And so you put ball in front of them, they work 20 times harder.
Well, I just want to thank you for being on the show. Yeah. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No problem.
For all the people listening out there, is there anything you'd like to promote or any requests that you'd like to make?
It's difficult to say right now, just that I'm available. I'm working at the gym in Hounslow. If you want any help with your pre-season training for five-a-side soccer, feel free to come in and find me.
Wonderful, and I'll put all your information
thank you.
On the web. And
yes.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to it on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Acast, or any podcasting catching app. Want to learn more about the guests and go behind the scenes? Then go to my website, www.footbalautobiographishow.com, and subscribe to my newsletter. Also, if you like the show, or even if you hated it, leave a comment on either my Twitter page @footballautobio or my Facebook page, The Football Autobiography Show. I welcome and would appreciate any feedback from you all. Thanks for listening. Take care.